Good morning. I plan to do a review on this book. It's a really good book. But I feel a strong push to do a longer video, and a good number of you that are easily triggered might want to switch off at this point. I don't know. By the way, I'm smoking one of my toughest rops. Not hard to smoke, but especially after reading that book, I could see this as being like the pipe of Samwise Ganges or some of the hobbits. As y'all know, I currently attend Catholic Mass. But I came to Christianity through the Orthodox Church, Eastern Orthodox, OCA, then later ROCOR. Before ending up in the Celtic Orthodox Church. But before all that, I had spent I worked it out one day, figured out the actual years. I spent 28 years as a Wiccan, a pagan, Wiccan third degree high priest. And in that time, prior to that, I was born and raised Southern Baptist. My running joke is it took 28 years being a pagan to get the Baptist out of me so I could become Orthodox. I could become Christian. I keep this thing. Don't teach me patience. It is an aggravating lighter. One reason why I like the match. I had spoken to Jesse Romero about telling him my story. We sent some emails back and forth, and he was scheduled to call me, but he never did. So I guess he's not interested or busy, you know. And I had spoken to Michael Voris, last August at a conference. Gave him the quick headline, Reader's Digest. He went, wow. So, and I've had a couple people that had been on Church Militant that wanted me to write down my story. Well, I'm dyslexic and I really my spelling and apostrophes and all this. Too many times I've written stuff down, and people, they say, I can't read this, you don't have correct grammar, so I'd rather talk to folks. Give an interview, as it were. So, today I'm going to give an interview. I'm going to give it to you. When I was, I'll say 19, I was 20, 21, I met my first wife at the jazzercise place, not jazzercise, but aerobics place. And we started having a good time. Now, I was raised, as I said, Southern Baptist, which meant that at the age of 10, the Baptists sent a bus through and asked kids if we wanted to go to church. If you said yeah, they went and talked to parents. Parents said, okay, yeah, that's good, you know. And the bus come by every Sunday and they kept taking you to church. The Brand Baptist Temple. Here's my plug for the Baptists. If you're not Baptist, you're going to hell. Foregone conclusion. In fact, if you don't belong to Brand Baptist Temple on Overcheck Boulevard in West Palm Beach, you're going to hell. In fact, if your Tuckus ain't sitting in the first 3 pews and ain't looking real good, so by the time I had junior high school, didn't have to worry about that anymore. Okay, you got your religion, you're good. You got baptized, you're saved, you're fine. And this is in the midst of the sexual revolution, the 70s. Fast forward through high school. By this point, I've already got a lovely little sex addiction going on, as few will admit, but most of us in that time period were in the midst of. Met my first wife, this gal I was dating. I won't really call her wife because she village bicycle. Let's put it that way. All right. Murder of what would have been my firstborn. So after time with that, and I've been sucked into paganism. When I say sucked into, I mean, basically, it was a great place to get laid. Let's be honest. Brutally honest. That's what it was. And there I stayed. When I met my true wife, Miss Jill, I was pagan. God gave me my true love. Most beautiful woman I'd ever known. Most gracious, most elegant woman I will ever know. And after 4 years, we were married. And it was a beautiful marriage. Little did I know that the devil had long beforehand set up one hell of a demon, one hell of a witch, which I profess to be, but have been, but a true witch within that, in the guise of my mother-in-law. That individual came out when my wife became pregnant with our daughter. And that's when the troubles began. After my daughter was born, they got worse with her. Now, during this time, I was traveling the country, working my job, and with stresses and stuff like that. And yes, I still had that sex addiction, but so did her father, a collector of porn and all the rest of it. So here I was not living the way I should be living, but I did not really understand or know that. So I went through that divorce, which cost me at the tune of, as far as money, $243,000, which was everything I had and everything I didn't have. But what was worse, it cost me my life. It cost me my wife. It cost me a good portion of my sanity, my soul. This was God breaking me down. And He's breaking me down for a reason. And it's taken me a long time to understand this. After that, and in the midst of all this, I still had to learn my lesson. So I went for what I refer to as contractual concubine number 1. I immediately went out, met a gal at a reenactment. We met up about a week later, had a good old time in a hotel room. And I said, hey, you know how to cook? You got a job? Wife didn't really know how to cook very well. Miss Jill didn't. Miss Jill was a homemaker. And I was stuck traveling all over the country, not being at home, not being with my family, working my butt off. Coming home to sleeping on a couch because the mother-in-law is sleeping in my daughter's room because my daughter's sleeping in the marital bed with my wife, and therefore I'm on the couch. That went on for years. So anyway, so I got contractual concubine number 1. And she was Sicilian and Italian on one side. Her dad's side is standard, American mixture of, we're mutts. This woman had a very short temper. This woman, by the way, also was pagan, and apparently had been through several marriages. So that pretty much finished off. So by the end of that, which was 2 years later, actually less than 2 years later, I wound up. She worked for a big nationwide insurance company, and went off to Atlanta because I was living in West Palm. Went off to Atlanta to work there while we were married. While we were under that contract, I wasn't married. At this point, lost the house, wound up in a tent, traveling the country, working. About a year later, I wound up in Minnesota, Paganistan as they call it, in the big pagan community there. And I was learning quite a bit. I was learning a lot. I was learning very strongly that paganism was bullshit. I had run into Satanists off and on through this period. And I'd sat down and had conversations with them, and their trinity was me, myself, and I. Basically, I looked at one and said, so basically you're spoiled brats. He goes, yeah, that's it. There were times through my life, this back when my wife was pregnant, they wanted to, because I was born with coarctation aorta. In 1969, they went and hacked me open like a hog. I was thinking I was like the 4th kid in the country had this operation. They went, cut up a section of my aorta, pulled it together, stitched it up. It later exploded. They had to go back in. I'd lost 6 pints or quarts of blood. By the way, that's how much blood a child 6 years old has. All intents and purposes, I was and should have been considered dead and just tossed into a pile. God saved me for a reason. I often spoke about, this beautiful goddess who held me during this time at the base of a tree. And yeah, that's kind of correct and kind of not. I spoke about it and twist around so much, I don't I can't say for sure if I actually experienced this, but I got the feeling that of being in the arms of Mother. It wasn't the goddess. It was Mary. Anyways, many times through my life, should have ended me. That was the first one. When my wife was pregnant with my daughter, they kept pushing to check the embryonic fluid. Oh, it's safe. It's okay. It'll be fine. We're just going to take this needle. We're going to go inside your wife's stomach. We're going to suck out some fluid because you had heart. They were looking for an excuse to do this. They kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And at one point I looked at them and said, my daughter is going to be perfect. She's going to be exactly the way the good Lord, I'm pagan at this time, the good Lord intends her to be. They didn't buy it. So I sat down with my wife and doctor, and we were having this conversation. And doctor, by this point, has my wife in tears, has her scared to death. This is the only person who can save our child from something that they say she may or may not have. But they're pushing that she's going to have it. She's going to be deformed. She's going to be retarded. She's going to all this stuff. In fact, when we first found out she was pregnant, the nurse in front of me said, "Do you want to keep it?" I looked at that nurse like I could have ripped her head off and used it as used it as a bowling ball at that point. Well, at this point, I looked at that doctor and said, "Okay, I'll tell you what. You can stick the needle in my wife's belly." "Sure." "Really?" "Yeah, you can do it." My wife looked at me like, I said, "Yeah. You have to do one thing first." The doctor says, "What's that?" I said, "You will have to remove my teeth from your throat." "Get it?" We got up. Me and Jill walked out. Numerous times I've been in car accidents where I've had been cut out. I have had things explode on job sites. I've had things happen on job sites. I've had things happen in life where I should have died. I've been on my old motor goose. I'm going down 95, and I see cars piling up all around me. I'm dead. I'm on a motorcycle. A Motor Guzzi Le Mans, 85. I'm gonna die. And somehow, I'm not a stunt rider. I'm not a lifetime motorcycle racer. Me and that bike, right straight through it, like going through the eye of a needle, unscathed. That wasn't me. That was a guardian angel. That was guardian, just get out of the way, I got this. Anyways, I wound up buying a farm in Kentucky on what's called a land contract. I now had a home. I was there for 4 years. In the midst of that, I wound up with contractual concubine number 2, which was, this is where I learned about what bipolar was. Apparently that contractual concubine number 1 had it. I'm sitting on the edge of a hill. I was squirrel hunting. I had my flintlock, my 6.22 caliber 2-leaf fusil to chase, loaded with shot. Sitting there waiting for squirrels, just kind of mellowing out. While I'm sitting there, you're being quiet. You let your mind, go through things, and you kind of like meditate. All of a sudden, I got this plain as day vision of a man with a long white beard, wearing black clothing, black long tunic. Now we call it a Cossack, with a black hood over his head, with all this white writing in a language I didn't understand. So I said, what the hell? It's not a druid, because I know what druids were, because I hung out with druids in back in Florida and even out in Minnesota. In Minnesota, I hung out with the Norse heathens. I hung out with other Wiccans, which were overrun with homosexuals and lesbians, and they referred to me as a knuckle dragger because I was a blue-collar, hard-working, straight man, something they considered to be an oddball in the pagan community. Anyways, so I saw this vision. What is that? So I wrapped up, went back to the farmhouse, and got on a computer and started putzing around. And in my studies, that brought me to the Orthodox Church. That's where I first learned that a priest is a descendant, a learned descendant. Like I learned from so-and-so, so-and-so learned from so-and-so, someone all the way back to one of the 12 disciples, all the way back to Christ. That is their authority. I grew up in Southern Baptist, they didn't have that. They're laymen. I don't care how big the preacher thinks he is and what color his Rolls Royce is or Ferrari, he is a layman. And I learned that they had cut 7 books out of the Bible. Have you talked to a lot of Protestants? Well, no, the Catholics added 7 books afterwards. Well, the Orthodox, who had nothing at all to do with the Protestant Reformation, it was in a different part of the world and were completely, based on all intents and purposes, completely cut off. They got the same number of books, the same books. Now let's talk about the Ethiopian Bible, because that Bible you would need a 12-foot ladder to get to the first page, because they have all the old books that everyone else took out. Reason being, back when they had that soiree gathering up to decide on what apocryphal books and what books repeat themselves, and let's get this down to a manageable size amongst all the metropolitans, all the bishops of the church. This is before the schism, before 1054. They all came together during the time of the Desert Fathers. And because there were a lot of heretic groups that were popping up that were designed by Satan to draw people away from Christianity, from true Christianity. So they wanted to go through and they had to weed this out and get it down to a manageable size to where it stays on track. And the Ethiopians didn't get an invite to that soiree, so their Bible's about 12 feet thick. But there's a lot of cool, good books, a lot of good wisdom in there as well. Anyway, so after I wound up walking away from the farm, I had to go back to Florida. I had to get rid of that last wacko contractual concubine and get to an Orthodox church, because there was no church here in Kentucky, in this part of Kentucky, no Orthodox church. So I walked into St. Herman's of Alaska in Boynton Beach. At that time, Father Michael was the priest, and I walked in and I looked around. Father Michael was just going to help you. I said, yeah, this is my church. Father Michael says, we'll see about that. A year later, I was chrismated. 2 years later, I was on a plane. I had gone to Belarus. I had met a girlfriend there. Spent my time in Belarus. I was on my way back in Frankfurt, waiting for the next flight. And sitting there waiting for his next flight was that individual. Not someone wearing the same, but that individual that God had sent me. I went up and introduced myself. I didn't do it properly because I was still a dumbass, still learning. You're learning until the day you die. Even 10 minutes after that, you're still learning. I went up and introduced myself and was on. He wound up being the Coptic Bishop of Cairo. He was a Coptic. That's who God sent me, to bring me back to Christianity, to the church. It was later I believe it was his church that was bombed. Okay, so I've come back. I'm moving back up to Kentucky. I'm originally from Florida, but I'm moving back up to Kentucky, back to the county, because I feel, okay, God's calling me to bring the Orthodox Church to this part of Kentucky. And I get here, I'm forced into early retirement, but when I get done, get my money, get things going, I buy the property next month. I get the Amish to build me a cabin, stick it on there. That's going to be the chapel. That's going to be St. Columban's Celtic Orthodox Chapel. My Celtic Orthodox because OCA decided, they didn't care about the folks in this area. Row Court, I was hindsight. And the Celtic Orthodox, Bishop Paul, he was the only one who'd sit down and give me as much guidance as he could, as much help as he could, mainly the guidance talk and everything. Through hours upon hours upon hours of chatting with this, I would say, good man. I honestly do believe that Bishop Paul was a saint, is a saint. Anyways, in fact, he's the one that gave me the nickname Brother Samuel the Blunt. And he was a dear friend. I loved him greatly. I feel sorry that I never got the opportunity to go to because he gave me numerous invitations to the monastery in Virginia. And he had a standing invitation with me because apparently we had a priest that moved in Kentucky. And he's about over an hour away from here, but I always told Bishop Paul that he could stay here. Here, comes Kentucky, stays in this house. You ain't paying no rent, you ain't paying for food. I like to cook. We always talked about food anyways. But come to find out, when I spoke to the OCA, this put me out of communion with the Orthodox Church because I was speaking to the Celtic Orthodox Church, which is an Orthodox Church, which has authority just as much as the OCA and Rocorn and Larissa. They were brought back in the 1860s, 1880s, in the 1860s, through the Assyrian. This is one thing about the Orthodox Church. The Greeks don't like the Russians don't like the Assyrians don't like everyone doesn't like everybody. But they're all descendant from the 12 disciples. So with not having anyone here, now it's been a couple years since I've had communion, and I'm really suffering on this one. So I went into St. Pat's Catholic Church over in Maysville. I'm sitting there by myself. I prayed my prayer rope. I'm like, what am I supposed to do? What am I going to do? What am I supposed to do? And I looked up at a statue of Mary, and her hands are like this. Okay. I'm looking, I'm just thinking, I'm just not verbalizing, I'm just, what am I supposed to do? All of a sudden I see her hands come together and come back apart. I understood what she was telling me. There is but only one church. Now, this much is true. That church has two hands, an eastern hand and a western hand. I get this. Yes, ma'am, I understand. Now, I've since been told, in fact, by a Rocorp priest, oh, well, that wasn't Mary. You don't know who that was. Excuse me. You start to sound like the Pharisees. Now, is there corruption in the Catholic Church? Oh, you betcha. Are there evil people in power in the Catholic Church? You betcha. Are there evil people in charge in the Orthodox Church? Yeah, as well. Satan is in the church just as much as outside the church. You got to pay attention. You've got to listen. You got to listen to the Holy Spirit. So later, I started learning about Saint Pope John Paul. I remember when Pope John Paul was about. He actually did the consecration consecrating Russia to Mary. Okay, because shortly after that, the Berlin Wall came down, the communism collapsed. In one of his homilies, he spoke of the church having, get this, 2 lungs. 1 body, 2 lungs. So, yeah, I understand what she's telling me. Now, I'm Orthodox. I'm Catholic. I belong to the original universal church, the Orthodox Catholic Christian Church, the church. Whether you're Orthodox, whether you're Catholic, we need to end this schism. Those in control, well, in fact, St. John Paul, he capitulated to the metropolitans. Everything that everything that caused the schism, he said, okay, all right, well, it's gone, done, over. Apologize. Everything, well, what we say, all the rest of that. Yeah, okay, we're sorry. And our leaders in the Orthodox Church refuse to accept it. They want to keep the schism going because it gives them power. Not that everyone's going to follow behind the Pope, because the Pope is in himself just a bishop, just metropolitan of Rome. The metropolitan of Rome controls the Western Church. The metropolitans of the Orthodox Church control the East, or the Orthodox churches. That includes North Africa and all that. None of them want to give up power. So what do we do about that? Nothing. That's up to God. What we do about that is we stay within the church, receive Holy Communion, go to confession, listen to our priests. If our priests start preaching things that you know are heresies, let them know. You know that's a heresy. Tell them they're wrong. But other than that, keep going to church. Get back in church if you haven't gone. Okay? You can go to confession. Well, my priest believes in blah, blah, blah. When you're in that confessional, Christ is standing there. The priest is there in lieu of Christ. Christ is there. He is listening to you. That priest, just the individual, he's just the mouthpiece. But you're speaking to Christ. Christ forgives you of your sins. When you go to communion, even if that priest is, take that communion. If you're Orthodox, it goes in the mouth. Okay, the blood and the wine. And when the Orthodox, the bread is risen bread, because Christ is risen. In the Catholics, it is unleavened bread in honor of our Jewish brethren, from where we Christians come from. We are a Jewish sect. Okay, I just pissed off another third of you right there. It's true. Christ was a Jew. The disciples were Jews. Okay, so, but for my Catholic brothers, take communion on the tongue. Your hands are not worthy. You get crumbs on your hands, you brush off. That's God. That is Christ. What else have you done with those hands, even that day? Take communion on the tongue. I don't care if, Vatican II, I don't care. Okay, think about the realism. Use the wisdom. That is Christ. That is going from the hand of the priest, or in the Orthodox sense, the spoon the priest is holding, into your mouth. Not on your hands, not for you to drop on the ground, not to be disrespectful to. So, anyway, so that's it. Around 34, 35. Oh, well, for 35 minutes. I don't even know if YouTube's going to let me look down with this. So y'all take care. I'm going to finish smoking my Hobbit pipe. God bless. Bye-bye.